Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 73 of The Lunch Bunch. We're back, and we're going to be talking about mobocracy. I thought I was going to screw that up, but I did it. We're going to be talking about mob mentality and social media, and does social media act as a catalyst for mob mentality? And what do we mean by that? Well, I'm not talking about trolls. We talked about trolls last Halloween. Trolls are those people that sit in their dark little cellars and just revel in making people's lives miserable. Mob mentality is something different. It's basically a lot of people ganging up on people, and not so much to make them miserable, but actually to show that they either are better or they think that they're behaving for the benefit of the majority of people who think the same way they do. There's a self-righteous thing happening with mob mentality. And did you know actually that in mobs, only 5%, the 5% minority actually give the direction of where the other 95 people are going to go. So it's always those 5%, those alpha dogs, that lead the mob, and the people that follow sometimes don't even know why they're following. They just jump in. So we're going to talk about that today with the Lunch Bunch, and I want to give you an example. There was a famous example, just a little while back, not far, Justine Sacco, who was a PR exec who did this very unfortunate, and I'm going to pull up the tweet here, who posted this very unfortunate tweet as she was ready to embark on Cape Town, South Africa from England. Now that's a long trip. So she posted, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. And then she got on the plane, and I said it's 11 hours, so she went to sleep. Now, in those 11 hours, a lot of things happened, including her life was absolutely destroyed, because that message was picked up, and there was a hashtag about her, and by the time she landed in Cape Town, her boss had fired her, and she was like just humiliated, and she had to start from all over again. So, and the thing is, she's not a big social media influencer. It's not as if that message went out to thousands and thousands of people. I think she only had like maybe 1,500 followers. She's only tweeted in her life, I think, 407 tweets. For example, I mean, BL has a ton of followers. I think I tweeted 40,000, and I joined in 2010, and I'm by no means a huge Twitter person. So you don't have to have a huge following or network for this to impact on you. So beware. Don't think just because you have a few people following you that message is not going to translate and communicate across the world, because it can. So that's a lesson for you. So today I'm going to be talking about.
So Ray said he was going to start talking about something, and then his microphone muted itself.
I did.
So.
Sorry, I'm going to fix that. 1 second. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
okay.
Sure can.
Sorry, that my elbow hit my cord and disconnected. Yes, so we're going to be talking to the panel about this habit of people ganging up on other people, and what causes it, what can we do about it, and have you seen it? Do you have examples of it? So we're going to start with BL, and I'm going to ask BL, first of all, did anything like this ever happen to you, BL, or someone close to you?
Well, it has actually happened to me, and more than once, but the most recent example was that I made a mistake, and it was a very big mistake. I misquoted Larry Page, or I misattributed Larry Page, a statement to Larry Page on my website. And somebody I don't know, a friend of me, started calling me a liar, and I mean really got like vicious. And friends said, "What's up with this guy?" And he was all over the place. He was everywhere. And so I went to where the source of the main conversation was, which was on Google Plus, and I said, and people were going on, they were starting to do this thing, and I said, "Thank you for pointing out my mistake. I have made a really stupid mistake. It has been corrected, and that's as much as I have to say about it." And what I did was I admitted that I was wrong, I apologized, and I was civil. And other people started to say immediately, like, come on, relax, it's a mistake. We all make mistakes. And there were a lot of pretty major people in that conversation, and that was it. I think that that's because I was following. It didn't have time to fester. I was aware of it right away. But I have seen situations that are really grievous, and one of them happened to my friend Shel Israel, who's co-authored several books with Robert Scoble. And unfortunately, like Ted Cruz, Shell had failed to buy the URL to his own name. And he did something that a person I don't even want to name because he's not noteworthy didn't like and was actually jealous of. And this guy bought Shell's name and started to put up really horrible videos of him as a sock puppet saying awful things. And all these other really prominent people, including Michael Arrington and a lot of other people you've heard of, jumped on the bandwagon and were in the videos, and we're all like really, really ripping him apart. And everybody was afraid to say anything because they were afraid they'd be next, except for me and Jeremiah Owang. And we did speak up, and it did eventually pass, but it did really, really serious damage to Shell personally. Not professionally, because it was clear this person was a lunatic, but the way that people jumped on it was horrific.
Wow, what a story! I mean, we see that. I mean, it's amazing that we see this now with adults. I mean, we've all seen this in schoolyards, and it just seems that, again, that's a question. Is it human nature? Jess, has it happened to you or someone that that's close to you?
Yes, and I'm going to speak to the mob mentality more in general when it comes to standing up for something that a person believes in. So there's this belief, and there's this belief that this is the way, and here's the best way, and here are all the reasons. And anytime there's somebody else that comes along and says, well, there's another way, and there's another set of beliefs, and this is the best way. And when there is no ability to bridge that gap, there tend to get to be these two sides where you end up with mobs on both sides, and that's where I've been. I've been in organizations where discussing things in a democracy that was led by a volunteer board of directors. You would get these people on both sides, and there would be these camps, and these camps would become immobile, and you can't. It was really hard to get past that, and to be able to stand in the middle of that and go, wow, I hear you, and wow, I hear you, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do about this. We're going to have to agree to disagree on this, is a very difficult thing because it leaves behind animosity, and it leaves behind anger, and it leaves behind unresolved feelings and thoughts because people don't actually feel like they're heard. So whoever took the stand over here and the people that stood behind them, directly or indirectly, and the people who stand over here directly or indirectly, and they come together, how do you make peace with that? And there never really was. Decisions were made and things were tried, and it turned out that no matter the people who were in charge at that time decided to please everybody, so they do some from over here and some from over here, and then what do you get? A whole bunch of big diluted mess because both paths were equally good. And when you have two paths to choose, you probably can't mix them very well, and so no one path was followed, and an entire organization suffered in terms of their placement in the industry, in terms of their ability to attract new members, in terms of their ability to understand and have something that they stood for. So it's very interesting from that perspective. I didn't have it on an individual level, more on an organization.
Well, what I'm thinking from what you're saying is that I imagine there were two leaders representing kind of both sides of that issue. So and people followed those two leaders, but there lacked a leader that come up the center and coalesce everything against something else. So I guess again that speaks to people following someone almost
without really knowing it.
Yeah. Scott, anything like this happened to you or someone that's close to you?
It's never happened to me on social media, but I have been witness to and I guess even participated in a couple of instances that might approach what we're talking about, which is mob mentality. We're so polite here on G+, and so when someone says something that is really strident, it really kind of takes your attention away. And I can remember one instance where there was a woman who, for weeks and weeks and weeks, was claiming that she knew all about social media and she would help us, who were just kind of the peons in the world, figure out how to really work social media in the real world. And she postponed her hangout, and it was going to be great, and you're going to be able to know how you can be in it's the New Yorker and big time. And so she gets on a hangout on air, and there's nothing but problems, and people are polite in the comment stream and whatnot.
It was broadcast on Forbes' website.
And it was broadcast on Forbes' website. Yes, thank you, BL. And there is one person in particular in England, in the UK, and he, 5 or 10 minutes into the broadcast, just lit into her and said, "I'm leaving." And then he wrote a scathing email about social media, people who claim to be a social media expert, and they're not. And she wasn't, and people just jumped on that, and she was excoriated. I mean, I had never seen anything like that on the Plus before, and I have to admit, I was kind of polite, but I took the side that, well, here's a person who gives social media a bad name, and people who tried to follow her or would be looking to her would be going off the cliff. And it was very hurtful for her, and I don't know whatever happened to her. So that was that's the one instance that I recall that there was somewhat of a mob mentality, just a lot of people ganging up on someone. And there are those of us who think that she deserved it because she was so arrogant. She was and did not deliver. She was asking for it.
I vaguely remember that post, Scott, and I have to say that yes, I mean, and one of the questions I was going to ask later, actually, when we talk about social media in general, like, are there platforms that are more prone to this than others? But I remember very recently, as recently as last night, I saw a post go downhill very quickly, and it's amazing to see that happen because it made no sense, really. It just became this big, schoolyard brawl. And speaking of schoolyard, I'm going to bring up something Danny mentioned, and it can't be the whole thing because it's a bit long. But he says, it's interesting to mention the school mob example. In school, we have monitors, teachers, etc. to intervene. Social networks, until very recently, did not make it easy to intervene. While not condoning this behavior, does the panel feel social networks have exacerbated and I just lost it. Here it is. Exacerbated the issue by lack of monitoring and removal of hate speech. Now that speaks to a question I'm going to have a little bit later about social media. But going back to the school thing, part of the problem, and I remember this, back in the olden days, just as the last dinosaur was stuck in the tar pond, and I was in grade school, that monitors weren't that attentive. It was like boys will be boys kind of mentality. It was almost expected. And it was true. You had this kind of wolf pack mentality where you'd have this one person who was the alpha wolf attack, they can smell weakness, right? So they'll pick out the weakest person in the schoolyard, pick on that person, and then the guys, his friends who want to be sort of next to the alpha male, will pick on him too, trying to get some of that glory, and then people will just watch. And very few people, unless a school monitor or someone in authority come by and stop it. And I think that what's interesting about the social media, sort of as far as an analogy goes, is that there's a lot of people who will just watch and not intervene and do anything about it. And I guess what maybe Danny is saying is that maybe the internet itself has to monitor that through controlling hate speech and all that, which they try to do. But really, it's a balance between controlling hate speech and freedom of expression, right? Which we see in everyday life.
What about wherever we put our focus is where the energy goes? I'm going to go back to like a yogic saying, in terms of if we're looking for that, that's what we're going to find. So what if we didn't focus on that, or when we came across it, we said, oh, okay, acknowledge, accept, and join a different conversation or move on, because I don't know who can actually monitor that and control it. It's up to the people showing up in these mediums and in these places. So unless it's like a neighborhood watch, which hopefully we already have in place, where we've got our networks of people and we can rely on them to support us and not necessarily stand up and take a beating for us, but to have enough positive energy that everything diffuses quickly.
The only thing I have to say, and I'm going to go to a comment that BL has, is that it's yes, but we have to remember the person, the victim of this mob, and if we ignore that, are we just basically enabling these people to do what they set out to do, which is publicly shame them or humiliate them? I'm going to go to BL. Oh, Christine is up. Go ahead, BL. Can you read it? Oh, she's muted. Never mind. Christine says, there will always be differences in opinion, beliefs, and practices. However, that doesn't excuse bad behavior. At the end of the day, we are all human and deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. Yes, we do, Christine. And that speaks to the empathy word, right, which we talk about a lot on social media, and authenticity and being human and all those things. But there seems to be sometimes a shortage of empathy, and I think part of the weaponry that people use is basically dehumanizing other people, and that's how they can get away with this. We see it with with armies, with people who are polar opposites. They'll just belittle the other person, so that person becomes less human. And I'm wondering if, and this leads me to the second question, how much is due simply to being human nature, and how much is due to the fact that we have the ability, this global bullhorn, always at the ready? How much impact does social media have in causing this kind of behavior?
Well, I think social media has a huge impact in causing this behavior, because you can't take it back. And it's just so easy. We're all carrying social media in our pockets all the time. It's just too easy to make a comment. It's just too easy to join a conversation. And, even people who don't know the person get involved in it. Even people who weren't there get involved in it. It used to be, for example, if a kid went home from school, they were safe in their house, but now they're not. Now the bullying continues unto the death in more than one case. And this is the people have had career deaths, and it gets very serious. But I think we do need to address, like, what can people do about it, and is there anything?
Well, one of the things, great point, BL, and one of the ways to look at it is that it's a clash of cultures, and the two cultures are in real life, which goes along in clock time, and then internet. At the internet, the social media is still in its infancy. We are so immature in terms of what we're doing, and if you want to be hopeful for the future, one can imagine that years from now, people have heard me say this, our grandchildren are going to look back and see how we have acted on social media, and they're going to say, boy, how naive those people were. They'd post pictures of their kids, and they would go on vacation and say, here I'm on vacation and whatnot. Internet and social media, I think, is just going to evolve, and it will become better and better, has a potential of becoming better as people become more social media and internet literate. Right now we're all kind of bungling around and not doing things very skillfully.
Well, and what about, you used the word empathy before, Ray, and listening to all of this, another word comes to mind for me, which is compassion. And I think that there is a difference. I can be empathetic that somebody made a choice to say something that caused a backlash because that was their choice. I can also show compassion for them by not joining in the public humiliation, but still being there to witness and support in whatever way I can that person on their journey. So when people are people, and we're all people, and we all do stupid things, I'll be right up there and say that I do stupid things. So if somebody's going to publicly humiliate me, I probably deserve it from their perspective, and it probably will hurt me very badly. But in the end, if I'm like, okay, well, apparently that was pretty stupid, Jess. Now what am I going to do? I can stand up and what BL described at the beginning, apologize for it and move on, and I can let it be. As long as I dwell on it, if I'm in the middle of it and I'm the one who is having all this directed at me, sticks with it, I'm not going to be able to move past it, and there will be a stigma around me and that thing longer.
That's you, Jess. You're a strong person.
Oh,
There
okay.
are many
Thank you.
people who are not. There are many people who don't have the wherewithal to stand up to that type of an attack. People who suffer from depression, people who suffer from who knows what. And that means that sometimes this is really, really hurtful in a way that goes beyond what could have happened offline. And I also think that the opportunity to stand up for people certainly is there, but I think it's rare in social media for people to come forward. Unfortunately, they don't.
What's interesting about the question about social media, and one of the reasons I asked is because I came across this article that there's a study, and I'm going to see if I can find it here. It's social media brings out the worst in people, says a new survey. I think it was Leeds University. And it said, the question was, do you ever behave on social media in a way that you would not behave in real life? 76% of people said yes.
No. Wait, say that again. What was it?
Do you ever behave on social media in a way that you would not behave in real life? 76% said yes, they behave differently on social media than they do in real life. And of those behaviors, obsessiveness, 68%, selfishness, 66%, jealousy, 63%, boastfulness, 54%, flirtatiousness, 49%, lustfulness, 43%, egocentricity, 37%, aggressiveness, 19%. So
it's that Facebook crowd, right?
Spoken like a true Google Pluser.
That's supposed to be a joke, but when the company, when Google says do no evil, and we think that they mean it, you set the tone. And you look at Twitter, and Twitter has a different culture than Facebook does, than Pinterest. All of these platforms develop a predominant culture. And you're right, there are ugly, ugly places on the internet. And if you don't visit them, then your statistic like you just gave will shock people like Jess and me. Because I think social media, my experience is that it brings out the best in people.
Well, I just assume that I am who I am, and I'm always that person. And now I get though. Okay, so let's explore this from a different perspective. If kids are going to be kids, and we have to have these hurts to become stronger, and we have to have these hurts to decide, is this something we want to wear or not? And then we get the joy on the other side to say, is this something we get to wear or not, and adopt that as part of who we are. And when I think about some of this stuff and I hear those statistics, I'm like, okay, well, how much of that is all the time, and how much of that is personal development and seeing, am I changing or am I staying the same, and can I push the boundaries a little bit to be heard in all of the noise out there? And so I wonder how much of that might be going on in some of those statistics.
Well, I'm sure that you and Scott are having, experiences that are apropos your personalities, but that's not what the majority are. And one of the other studies that I've seen is about how people put forth on social media that they have a wonderful life, that you only see happy pictures and you only hear about wonderful things, and meanwhile that same person is going through the thing that we all go through. So people don't present themselves as in fact they are on social media. There's some serious problems, and the fact that it's so easy to do that either positively or negatively has great impact on this issue of bullying.
I think there's a disconnect. I think social media, I'm going to give my opinion here, and I think social media creates this sort of false reality, in the sense there's a disconnect between who you are and this monitor that people are facing, whether it's in their pocket or not, or a desktop. we have this problem with businesses all the time. We always tell them, behave like you would in real life, network like you would in real life, meet people, get to know them before you drag them into the store. But as soon as the camera comes on, or as soon as the computer goes on, they feel they have to do things differently because it's digital. And I think socially we do the same thing. We may know rationally that could be hundreds of people seeing our stuff, but I think really there's that just one person that we're talking to, and usually it's ourselves. And so I think there is a disconnect, and because of that disconnect, there's a sense of security, of safety. I can say whatever I want, and I don't have to own up to it, especially if I'm anonymous, right? So I mean, and it brings out horrible behavior. Not to say that that horrible behavior doesn't exist in real life, but Danny Brown just brought an example, and I'm going to just pin it if I can find it, because it happens so often, and I read about it so often, and that is, he brings out, and I think it's just below this, what he says here is that a prime example of that is a case of Simone Bach, who took her own life in 2010 after saying she was going to commit suicide, and her Facebook friends jumped on and encouraged her to do so. And how many times have we seen that kind of behavior? It's like you were saying earlier, Scott. I think it was you, Scott, that was saying about the YouTube thing. No, it was you, Bale, about the ganging up and beating up of people and people going on that YouTube thing just to have it go viral. That's animals. That's animalistic. Everybody is muted.
Yes.
Okay.
It really is animalistic. It's a horrible thing, and I think that we see a huge amount of it. The takeout that I brought today, there's a whole book about it, and I mean, this is not a random happening, unfortunately. And the case that Scott brought up about that woman, that went on for days. Yeah. Absolutely went on for days. And also, like at the beginning when Google Helpouts started, some people got on me in such a big way that the moderator said, either you stop behaving this way or you're out of here. And, it turned so fast. And it was about something completely stupid.
Okay, so, sorry, Jeff. We're going to go to the takeouts, because there's so much information out there about this topic, and the gang did some research, and we have some great links to articles for you. I'm going to start with Jess. Mm-hmm. Jess, want to share your takeout, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Core values play such a big part in who we are and what we stand for that when I was reading and researching about this topic today for the panel, it made me think, okay, so if we know who we are and what we stand for and how we want to be in life wherever we are, maybe having a core value set for ourselves, like companies do for their companies, but for ourselves, might help us navigate this as we are walking around or surfing and we come across conversations and how we choose to show up and contribute in that. So 10 questions to identify core values for yourself that you can put into place and carry around in your pocket along with your social media so you look at it every single time before you post.
Thanks very much, Jess. I'm going to go to mine, and then I'm going to go to, I don't remember who I'm going to go to next, but I'll go to somebody. Okay.
You'll go to BL.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go to mine, and mine is, I shared this online, the articles I read actually that kind of inspired this topic today, and it was from Gini Dietrich, who wrote "The Social Media Mob Has to Go." And one of the things inside the article that I thought was very helpful, because we are talking about basic human behavior, and when we talk about basic human behavior, the golden rule has to play, and how treat others like we would like them to treat us. And she came up with a golden rule that I think speaks to a lot of social media etiquette that that most of us take for granted. But if someone wrongs you, talk to them privately. That's if you get that happens on Twitter all the time. You see that people having these arguments on Twitter will say, please get a room. Don't jump on the bandwagon. Be professional in your discourse. Take time to learn both sides. That speaks to Jess's point about compassion and empathy. Remember, there are human beings on the other side. You're not talking to a keyboard. You're not talking to a monitor. You're speaking to another human being. So show some empathy. Try to put yourself in their shoes. And of course, live the golden rule. We all know this from grade 1 or from nursery school, but boy, we have to be kind of slapped on the head a couple times to remember that. So that's that. And I'm going to go now with BL. BL, what do you got?
Yes, just today there's a review of this book in the New York Times, and it's called So You've Been Publicly Shamed, and it is by John Ronson, who writes mysteries and humor, and this is a serious topic that he has addressed with multiple examples of people who've been shamed and how they handled it, and interpreting what it means. It looks like a fascinating book. It just was published today, so I haven't read it, but having read the review and having looked at it, I have to get it and read it.
Super. So, and you're going to share that, of course, in the event?
Yes.
Thank you. Alrighty, Scott, your turn.
And we have a lunch bunch first because BL and I have kind of the same takeout. My takeout specifically isn't from the New York Times, wherever that was. It's from NPR, and there's a story on this morning featuring the very same book. So you've been publicly shamed. And I thought one of the things I might do is share just one of the paragraphs from the NPR story, which talks about on the difference between trolling and shaming. And he says in part, I think self-righteous people who piled onto this person, robbing her a joke of its nuance and just trying to destroy her because they wanted to be seen as a kind of Rosa Parks. But of course they weren't, because there was nothing brave about it. They're more frightening, actually, than trolls. So this, I think, is going to probably turn out to be one of those must-read books for people who are interested in this sort of topic.
Definitely. I'm definitely going to be picking that up. I came across that book doing the research, and it's very apropos, and I think people have to pay attention to this this whole thing about mob rule on the internet, and I don't know what we're going to do about it. I don't know. It's a huge problem because we're dealing with human beings, and we still haven't solved bullying in school, schoolyards, let alone bullying online yet. So it's a huge challenge for society. So thank you all very much. I much appreciate you coming today, and much appreciate you out there. If you have any questions or topics, we're all going to jump into the event page as soon as we can and answer them for you. We'll leave our links there for the takeout, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.